And is that your meeting notes? Read AI?
No. Maybe it
Okay.
is. I don't know. Who knows? You can kick them out though. I don't want any AI on this call.
That might actually be this live stream thing. I'll just let him in.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Now that the recording started, I know not to say anything inappropriate.
I, oh, now there's a weird echo.
Is there still one?
I don't know. Is there a weird echo?
I don't have a weird echo, but
Oh, I do. I know why. Okay, cool. I figured it out. Because YouTube popped up in the other window and it's got
uh,
volume and whatnot. Yeah. All right. So I am excited, folks who are coming in. And here is my slide. Micah, you're old hand at this. You've been doing this a while, right?
yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
like you
do
said, you're like,
appreciate the robot holding the globe of sun.
I picked that one myself. I'm glad you like that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me make sure I'm still letting people in. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I could tell you're old happy because you're like, oh, we're going live. I can't say this or that now. I have to be careful.
Yeah. Well, yeah, with the podcast, you always have the ability to edit afterwards. And it's
That's true.
typically not me. It's typically something that Greg says that I'm like, I don't know if we want that to hit the airwaves. Nothing ever too bad, but it's you're just like, I don't know. I'm trying to keep this show G to PG, and I know that rating scale has shifted over time based on my kids' movies.
That it has shifted, and I know Greg can be a little bit provocative, so that's
Yeah.
great. You guys have been really doing a fantastic job with the podcast, and lots of things going on. So I'm just going to welcome people who are coming in. We got a few more people coming in. I'm just letting them in as we go. Let's see. We got Abdul here. We got Greg here. We've got WK Khalil. Awesome. Hey, if you guys wouldn't mind, let's just take a minute. Let me know where you are calling in from in the chat, please. Just let me know your location. That'd be awesome. I am in Hamilton, Ontario. Micah, where are you today?
Beaverton, Oregon.
Oregon, Northwest. How's Beaverton today?
Oh, amazing. I mean, we're in the peak season before it turns depressing.
I think many of us are, yeah. Um, awesome.
Greg,
Is Dallas?
I was just in London. Could have said hi, although I don't know Essex from London because I'm a dumb American, but
Yeah. Uh, Greg gets it. Awesome. I was just in Ireland, so I was also in the UK. I was in both parts of Ireland, so
nice.
and I got this lovely cold.
Mm.
Seema, there you are. I know where Seema's at. She's in Edmonton.
In cold.
Is it cold? It's can't be that cold. You got the
No,
cup.
no, no. It's just gradually starting. It's very surprising that it's not cold yet.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's
S
still good.
Soak it up. Soak it up.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
Waleed is in Sweden. Awesome. We got Dallas, Texas. And, we are live streaming this on YouTube, and I'm sure we got some people listening on YouTube who are in all different parts of the world. Um, so I'm really excited today because I brought in Micah. So Micah, if you don't know, he's been around here in the project controls community. He's been talking up a storm. There's a very popular podcast that he does with another entrepreneur. We were just talking about him, Greg. Um, and Micah, I'm not going to do your bio justice, but I'm watching the moves that you've been making, and you and I have known each other for a little while now. So fill us in. Where have you been? Where have you come from? And
Yeah. Where did you come
let's
from? Where
start
did you
there.
go?
Yeah,
Yeah. I just, for me, I've been in project controls, project management for about 15 years now. I got my start probably like most of you did, just kind of randomly falling into it. It was the middle of the recession. Someone called me, one of the recessions that we've had in the last 10 years.
yeah. One of those ones.
Oh man, is it Friday yet? We could have had a drink to that one. But anyways, I just fell into it randomly and I took a bunch of random jobs. I worked at a nuclear deconstruction facility. I worked at a laser observatory, at a ship construction. I did large scale ferry boat ship construction. And then in 2014, I landed at Google and that was just, I got really lucky and fortunate opportunity, right place, right time. Was on their data center construction team and then ended up over the next 8 years building the planning and scheduling program there. After Intel, or sorry, Google, I jumped to Intel and was there for a couple years until Intel ran into some financial issues that prevented them from continuing building, and I love to build. And so this January, I started my own consultancy, so I could just work at helping more people, more clients. And so right now, I'm the CEO of Movar US,
Yeah,
and we are a project management based consultancy, primarily focused in the data center space right now. That's my bread and butter. Turns out we're building a lot of data centers right now, so it's a good
yeah,
vertical to be in. But I work with clients from all sorts of walks of life. So large subcontractors all the way up to large owners, and then past that into hedge funds and investors as well. So it's pretty cool. I get to see the chain of what everybody wants to look at and see, and a very big diverse of data center projects.
that's amazing. Yeah, you've got a real breadth of experience there. Fill me in though, because I know the guys in Movar in the UK, and how did you become affiliated with them?
Yeah, so I started writing first online, and that's where I was like, I actually really enjoy writing long form pieces, and something we'll weirdly touch upon in predictive forecasting today. No one
Yeah,
reads long form stuff anymore. Our attention span has dropped incredibly low, and so I quickly shifted to making shorter form content. And as that LinkedIn presence started to grow, I just kind of got connected with the Movar UK group, and it just kind of was a fit because one of the key people there, Dale Fong, has the Project Chatter podcast. And
yes.
so there was kind of like we see the world in a very similar, type perspective. And so that created that connection. And then, I just kept on cranking out content on the podcast, and they eventually stripped me away from Intel.
Makes sense. I think I've been in that position myself where I started making a lot of content and then it affected the role I was in. So
Yeah, I mean,
congratulations.
I would recommend for just about anybody. I think there is different levels of it and different ways to do it. And there is the stuff that I'm doing at on like on LinkedIn in a public space, but you can take the same approach at your grouping company you're still in right now, and making certain pieces of content, like the amount of, decent sized scheduling groups that don't have a newsletter. Like that was the first thing I did at Intel, and it was
Hmm.
weird. All of a sudden, I went from just like a scheduler nobody to like, hey, have you seen Micah's newsletter? And all I was doing was just taking a couple of the things we were doing and putting it in an email and sending it out every week. I mean, it was like, boom.
The little things matter. The little things matter. Well, thanks for filling us in. Today we're going to talk about predictions, right? Project predictions.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Let me see if I can master the Zoom presentation. I had a couple slides to help act as my crutch.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm just going to respond to this question while you're figuring that out. So there is a podcast that Dale Fong from Movar UK runs called Project Chatter. And then Micah, your podcast is called Beyond Deadlines.
Yep.
Yeah. So guys, if you haven't checked those out, please go ahead check them out. Both really good podcasts.
I think I need to switch. There we go. Does that look
Oh,
good now, everyone?
that looks amazing.
All right, cool. All right. So feel free to type questions as we go or just shout them out on the mic if you can. Feel free to interrupt me. Don't feel like you don't have to wait for anything as we go. Let me find the next button. So we've already covered me and what I do, so this is good. We can flip the slide. I think to start out with, just a kind of general question for the crowd, like what is the point of creating a schedule forecast prediction? Like, what do you think? I mean, feel free to either shout it out or write it in the chat. Like, you have a schedule, you've been progressing it, and then you do some math or something to create a prediction. Like, what is the point of doing that?
Uh, if it's okay, I'd love to pick on somebody from the group.
I mean,
Seema,
pick
can I
away.
pick on
It's
you?
your crowd.
Uh, yeah, find a solution in advance, like uh, before, things go south or cause more damage in the project.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. In
I
the
mean, that's
chat,
it.
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. In the chat,
Okay.
Greg's saying reduce risk, which is in the same vein, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I completely agree as well. I think if you take those and you just step back a little bit from them, though, it's to make a change. So if you're reducing risk, you're making a change. If you're looking forward in the future and you're looking for a different scenario, it's to make a change. And so I think this is really key to understanding, what's the point of making a prediction? Because if you're not gonna enable or make a change, then you're kind of making a prediction as a hobby. And if you're gonna spend all of those hours of work collecting the data, doing the analysis, doing everything, and you're not gonna make a change, then you might want to question why you're doing it. Now, a lot of people run in to this scenario, and this is the funniest stock image I could find, where they actually do all the work, create, the data and the presentation, and you go in and you don't actually make a change. For whatever reason, management doesn't believe you, leadership doesn't believe you, whatever it is. And so before we actually get into some strategies and math on, how to make a predictive forecast, I love to tackle, this first part of like, how do you actually get people to move and change? And so I gave a little teaser at the beginning when we were talking about people's attention, but I think most people unfortunately know who this is or probably does, but this is Mr. Beast. He's the most popular YouTuber on ever, and his
Yeah.
videos rake up just a couple more views than Michael's do. For this one is 103 million views. And when I was doing my, kind of creator journey and researching, I was trying to figure out like why is he so successful? Why is he able to grab people's attention so much and make them make a change? Because that's what you're doing. I guarantee you came onto YouTube not to watch one of his videos, and you clicked on that, and now you're 20 minutes in, and you're wondering why you're doing it in your life, right?
Absolutely. And you
And
want
so
to know
what
how it turns out. You're like, who does win
yeah,
the $10 million? Like,
I know it's video drugs. But what's interesting about Mr. Beast is, and I was listening to a couple of interviews, he spends 95% of his time on the thumbnail, the title, and the first 30 seconds of the video.
hmm,
Like if you think about his entire production, and I'm sure with the grander he's gotten, this has changed a bit, but every single interview when he's talking to people about, their YouTube and coming up, they're like the thumbnail, the title, and the first 30 seconds. And so when I apply this to predictive forecasting and thinking about how to get people to change, I think about, wow, like how much time did I spend in the spreadsheet versus in the presentation? How much time did I spend in P6, like dinking around getting dates out versus kind of figuring out what's the story and like how am I going to present this to people? How much time did I spend like creating the P6 PDF with the perfect margins and the footer, versus talking to people who are close to the decision maker to start influencing that crowd, right? And so to me, when you're thinking about a predictive forecast, and this is like a hard lesson to learn, and I think counterintuitive to like what you would think you would do, but I would focus most of my time on framing what the problem is, being very clear about how I'm going to show the delay, bringing solutions, and have good visual storytelling, however it matches your company, right? Different
Yeah.
companies do different things, right? Google was a presentation company, but I know Amazon's like a white paper company, right? And those are the two different extremes. One, you're kind of creating like a Google, detailed presentation, and not detailed, but it's like a sales pitch, kind of like I'm doing here. And then in another one on Amazon, like you're writing a full document out. Two different skill sets,
Yep.
but you got to know which way you're doing it, and whichever way you're doing it, be the best at how you're doing it, right?
That's great.
So the next couple pieces we'll get into the math, and so this is an exact sample presentation, and I can include, I think, a link to this one that I put together about how I would do it. Now, again, this won't match potentially your project or your company, and I go on some tangents to help explain the data, but I definitely wanted to give a bit of a sample into what I do. So to start out with, what I usually prep the crowd with, because most people I'm speaking to aren't scheduling gurus, is that I tell them, hey, listen, we have a critical path schedule with zero float. And so if we are going to start with that, everyone needs to understand that there's a 0% chance we're delivering this project on time. Now, if there is contingency, right, this will be different, right? If you had float or buffer built into your schedule. But, if you have a year-long schedule and you have zero float, that means you're going to hit every single activity exactly when you say you're going to. And in my experience, that'll literally never happen. Yeah, I see some, people shaking their heads. So
Yeah.
I like to ground on that first because a lot of times management won't actually understand how scheduling works depending on how high you get up. And even just a level up, I've been surprised at how much people don't understand Primavera P6. They don't understand scheduling. They just fundamentally don't get what they've signed up for. Now, you don't want to go too far deep into this at the very beginning, but just to kind of set the table and kind of frame the problem out. So then I always like this kind of basic graph of, hey, on the up left graph, right? We have the forecasted schedule we have now, and I'll call it a rational optimism. It's a zero float critical path schedule. And then at the very bottom, we have the worst case scenario. So this is, COVID hits and we have a giant
Yeah.
sinkhole on our project and our train gets derailed or whatever, right? It's like you're on your black swan. Now, somewhere in the middle of this is actually where our project's going to fall, right? And so we need to figure out what is that orange line. And so predictive forecast is going to land somewhere between that best case scenario and worst case scenario, right? The most optimistic and the least optimistic. You're going to land somewhere in the middle. It's just kind of how things work. Um, and what we can use is actuals to help build up the prediction. So if you imagine now I'm talking to like some construction directors or VPs or whoever, I'm taking them on this journey now, right?
Yeah.
And I'm using very simple language, and I'm trying to explain to them that like I'm about to hit them with some data, but I got to warm them up before the data before I hit them with it, or else they're kind of gonna, all of a sudden the questions are gonna fly out.
Yeah, it's great. You're telling a nice story that's so far easy to digest, but you can feel like, oh, there's something coming. Something coming
Yeah.
here.
There's something coming that they don't want to hear. And so this is just the simplest method that I can provide you in the crowd, and I'm going to provide some more detail later. But one of them, my favorites, is just performance against duration. And so you take actual durations, so when activities finish, and then you compare it to what you planned to do. You can do this very, very simply in Primavera P6 by taking the original duration and the actual duration and just copy and pasting it out to Excel. But if we look at this, right, like right now, this project has a PAD of 1.5. So that means activities are taking 50% longer than planned, right? And so I think I have, where'd I go next here? Yeah, can you guys still see my screen?
Yep.
Cool. So if you pop open Primavera P6,
Yep.
here is like, I think it's one of their stock projects. Michael, you'll know better than me for all the installation videos you've done.
Yeah.
I think I
Yeah.
modified it a little bit.
Okay.
But I just popped up actual duration, or sorry, original duration and actual duration. And then you come in here and you just get rid of that WBS, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, you can just pop this over to Excel. Now, if you're going to want to slice and dice the data, like here, I'm not doing a big sample set. I mean, I've done this at projects with tens of thousands of activities. You're going to want to throw any codes in there to slice and dice it. Maybe you want to see it by like subcontractor or by area or by whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so then what that'll give you is something like this. And so I've kind of done it ahead of time, so you don't got to watch me fumble around in Excel. But then I just set up that basic formula that we talked about earlier, right? Actual divided by original, and then here, you get a, like an average or whatever, right? And so this will have it, and then, you can start creating your graphs that you want. Like I created this one by just doing a quick pivot. And then I always like smooth curves over pointing. They just feel better for me. So that is very easy to do in Excel. I'm guessing most people can probably look that up at Google. I have a video on my YouTube channel where I kind of go a little bit more into depth on this, but it's just taking that data from P6, bringing it over to a graph, making it look good. Um, and the thing about this strategy, which we'll dive into more, but on the PAD side, this can be done with any metric you have. So PAD is a very high level one. You can do this with milestone variances, start and finish dates, critical path drag, right? Like how much critical activities are impacting the critical path. You can do this with cost variance, resource variance, I mean, the world is your oyster. Now,
Yeah.
the only thing I'd recommend is, two specific strategies. Don't inundate your crowd with data, right? If you're going to use durations, you probably don't need to show them start and finish, right? If you're using earned value, you don't need to get fully into some of these other ones. So, um, the other one is, when you run your first predictive analysis or your first kind of like, here's my data, check it with like a different set or source of data as well. So, if you use duration to start out with, maybe just kind of double check what's going on with the quantities, or is it really matching what's on site? So you can kind of start seeing like, is this a garbage in, garbage out schedule scenario, or
Yeah.
is this an actual predictive. And then obviously you can take these metrics and you can go bananas on the filters and sorts. And so
That's a really good one. PAD is such a great one to start with because it's so easy. And you can rely on that data, right? Like if you've been updating your schedule, you can do the PAD analysis.
yeah,
Some of these other things you're talking about, like you said, garbage in, garbage out. So we need to do a little bit more validation on some of this stuff before we can trust the metrics are going to come out the way, give us real information. But PAD, what a great place to start. I really like that.
yeah. And then a pro tip too is if let's say you're on the client side and you're running this on a general contractor schedule and you think something funky's happening, and sometimes your original duration can get funky anyway. So I guess this is a pro tip for anybody, but you can just do it on previous iterations of the schedule. So you can use the original versus the actual. If you think that's coming up with something funky, just grab a schedule from 6 months ago and look at the duration they had there, and you can easily do a V lookup and do the same thing. So, I
Hmm.
mean, definitely go through your the paces and make sure you have good quality data. So I would take that data that I had, like on the PAD side, and I'd slap it out into, let me go back into presentation mode. Oh, I'm gonna have to do a whole flippy thing again. Hey, there we go. And I went back to the beginning because I clicked from the beginning. Hey, there we go. All right. So the key to any sort of what I've found, any sort of metric or predictive forecast you're doing is a starting place is you have to trend it over some time period. Typically for the construction projects I work on, that's by month. And so that's because usually there's a biweekly monthly update. So in each month, there's kind of two updates in there, and it kind of makes sense to start doing it over a month. You can look at by week if that's how your project is. You're just going to have more probably ups and downs and less kind of trend over time. But in the data set we looked at, right, like you have a PAD of 1.5. And if I plot this on a graph, um, we want to be down at the one target, right?
Yep.
And it doesn't look like we're going down towards the one target. So if I was presenting this in a group, it's an easy graph line to explain to say, here's our performance against duration. We want to be at the gray line. We're at the orange line, and it doesn't look like there's any chance that we're going to make the gray line, right? And so then this is the probably the first predictive technique that I would use. I call it manager math. And one of my managers taught it to me where he's like, hey, listen, man, you got all this data, it makes sense, that's great. But how about this? How about if I just take how much time we have left on the project? So in this example, 24-month project with 8 months of actuals, right? And that's produced that 1.5 PAD. 16 months remaining. What's 50% of 16? Hopefully everyone drank their coffee this morning. It's 8. And so really this project's going to go out 32 months. Now, usually when I do this first assessment for people, either they're like, yeah, that makes sense because of the critical path. And basically, we're probably just going to do a 1.5 PAD on our critical path and that'll push it out. But then if a lot of other people will be like, this doesn't work. No, I don't believe it. We're going to speed up, blah, blah, blah. And that you'll definitely get some pushback. But it's surprising to me, and I think I've been using this technique for about 6 years now, how accurate this is. And I will keep going deeper and create more data and more analysis and more. And most of the time I'm like, I could have stopped here because it's weird how
Yeah.
well this just high level will play into it. And I hear all sorts of excuses all of the time about, well, we got out late in engineering, but we're going to pick it up in construction. But here's the interesting thing about this. This is what really started to kind of tick why I think. A lot of times the person who made that engineering schedule is the same person who made the construction schedule. And overall,
Yeah.
maybe that person's just bad or under pressure or whatever it is at estimating durations. And
Yeah.
so it's not necessarily the work as much as the person who's guessing the work, right? Like it's kind of like one of those things is, if I took an amateur poker player and a professional poker player and I sat them down and had them play poker, it doesn't matter how many chips I give the amateur poker player, the professional is going to win, right? And so it's kind of the same thing of, there's a bit of psychology going on there. And then if you do get that pushback in the meeting, here's what I love. I love that. Oh, okay. So you think we're going to speed up in construction? Well, we've already, burned, if it's 8 months, we've already burned 4 months. So now we have to make up 4 to 8 months. So that means all of construction, if it keeps on going on a 1.5 PAD, right, has to actually get faster. So we'll track your
Yeah.
construction tasks over the next 2 months. We'll see how you're doing, and let's see if we can pick up and help this project out, right? And so I think any sort of pushback, right, is really really good. The only one you don't want to get to is if you get on like rock, I call them rock fetching assignments, where like people will, oh well, break it down by this and that and this and that, and you kind of just get bogged down in the data. But that's a little bit less. Okay, let's go one level deeper now.
Well,
And get
you
out
know
of
what? I want to just add one thing to what you said. So if we're going to try to accelerate, um, my forensic delay analysis guy, Tyler Conter's got a great slide on this um, that shows accelerated projects that still are constantly finishing on time until all of a sudden they drop off a cliff. And because that acceleration is actually squeezing all the total float, any float that was in the schedule gets squeezed out. The durations get squeezed, everything gets squeezed, so that then there's absolutely no, you eat up all the flexibility in the schedule in trying to accelerate. So then at some point you can't squeeze it anymore, and then you're just late. So that happens too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think to me, um the like Mount Everest and pop, I mean, it happens all the time because
Yeah.
people won't believe your predictive forecasts, and then it'll be, well, hold the schedule, right? Um So we have some sort of predictive data metric, and so now we're going to shift a little bit into a little bit of a quick explanation of Monte Carlo risk analysis and how we can use that predictive data into a Monte Carlo. And I'm going to go a little bit quickly in this for time's sake, and then probably because there's some experience in Monte Carlo, but at the heart of any risk model analysis in the Monte Carlo specifically, right? You have a min, a most likely, and a max, right? And so this is when a Monte Carlo is ran, how it wobbles the schedule or moves the schedule. So, in this install steel structure zone 1A, okay? What it would do is you would put in some parameters of what you think min, most likely, and max would be, and it would say that at a minimum, you're going to do it in 10 days. Like that's the fastest we can do it. Most likely is 18 days, and max is 32 days, right? Min, most likely, max. It runs 10,000 iterations on your schedule and it pumps you out some stuff, right?
Yep.
And so what I found with most people who run Monte Carlos, and most of the time when this happens, is that that duration, it's essentially what it is, a duration uncertainty, or that min most likely max. They don't actually use historical data to do it. Excuse me. So
Correct. Yeah.
for like in this example, on the min, they're saying we'll do it twice as fast, right? A quarter as fast or 10% faster. And most likely, we're just going to do it when we say we're going to do it. And then at a max, we'll do it when we say we'll do it. We'll be 5% longer. We'll be 10% longer, right? There's 80, 100, 120, right? Is also a pretty standard. And I can't tell you the amount of times that I've been given risk analysis. I've gone in and looked at the math behind it, and I've seen something like this. Now, the challenge is to me is if we have this level of historical data that is saying on average we are 1.5 over,
Yeah.
right? That should actually be what our most likely or our probable, right?
Right.
And that can be really hard for sometimes to get alignment on and to get moved forward on, but we have the data that shows that, right? Um, and so if we took it, so like in our example, and we set it up and said at a minimum, or like, the worst case scenario, we're going to be on time. Probably we're going to be, 50% over and max 200, right? We could look at the ranges and where we're at, right? And then we can take this and we can plug this into a Monte Carlo risk assessment. It's going to give you our p-values, our historical histogram. If you've ever seen, one of these, this one's coming out of nodes and lengths. But what I want to show you that's very important is up top. This is a 80, 100, 120 distribution on a kind of standard schedule. Um, and right, it's saying, that August 15th, August 22nd, and August 22nd, 8th, sorry, August 28th are the distributions, right, for 80, 100, 120. Now, when I came down and put in the 100, 150, 200, next thing you know, we have April of 25, Den of 25 in May. And so at that
Hmm.
P80 position, which is like the middle point, that's a
Yeah.
241-day difference.
Sorry, it's from August 22nd up top to April 20th next year, April 20th.
Hmm.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, we didn't go back in time. We
Yeah.
we went ahead
We
in time
went
by a bit.
way ahead in time. Perfect.
Right. And it kind of, you don't need to understand everything there is to understand about it out of Monte Carlo, but it kind of intuitively makes sense. I mean, the standard schedule had a pretty straight up critical path, right? And it's pushing all of those durations and all of the activities planned in the future, by 50%. And that's what it's saying that, hey, this is what's going to happen. Now, when you present information like this, it shocks the crowd. People
Nobody
will
likes it. Nobody likes it.
People will lose their minds. Yeah, you'll see, oh, there's no way this is possible, blah, blah, blah. And so you need to be prepared for that, right? And to me, that means you've framed the problem. And usually I like point to what are the issues, in a specific project. It's not relevant for this example, but I'd be like, hey, the steel, we're going really slow right now. or whatever it is, like contracts were late, blah, 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 right? So you frame that problem, and then you just got to be ready for this sort of like, oh, like this can't be true, right? And be able to turn the crowd into something productive. And so, I'm always coming with I've shocked them, and the first thing that I typically recommend is not like, oh, this is where we're going to throw overtime. This is, how we're going to expedite this equipment or that and go. I typically don't go right into acceleration strategies because what I found is more often than not, if projects are fairly delayed, like there's nothing you're really going to do to save them. And all of that is just going to spend a lot of money, a lot of work, and what is probably going on that needs to be fixed first is some sort of operational piece of it. And so what I mean by that is like if you weren't tracking any of these metrics, PAD starts finishes, like you should start tracking it. And so that's the way when that guy comes up and is like, we'll go faster in construction, you're like, cool, well, we're going to track PAD starts and finishes, and I need your help doing it. And this is how we can do it, right? You can start collecting more better metrics to understand if your project's going to be late. Um, if you do run risk analysis and do all that, right, you really want to make sure your critical path is spot on. So let's do a critical path review. Let's do a workshop. And then from there, you'll get ideas of how to accelerate and improve the project. But it will be funneled through a schedule first approach. Because if you let these people out of these room, these project managers, they're just going to go banana. Oh, we'll get a double shift and overtime and
Yeah.
expedite this,
Yeah.
and you won't be able to
Solutions.
control it.
They're into making solutions. Um, I wanted to say, you mentioned a couple slides back about the psychology of this, and what we're talking about actually has a lot of its roots in the psychology. There's a couple of really good books that I mentioned it. The one I'm thinking of is How Big Things Get Built, or I think it's
Yeah.
that one.
Built or done? I don't remember
Yeah, How Big Things Get
those.
Done. That's maybe that one.
I don't know.
And
Same thing.
there's a lot of research, not specifically related to construction, but about our optimistic brains. How even when we make an es- make an estimate of how long it's going to take me to get to work, we say, oh, it's 12 minutes. It's really not far. And in fact, it's 17 minutes. Your brain thinks it's 12 minutes. The reality is 17 minutes. And if there's a little bit of traffic, it's 20 minutes. But you're just like, my job is close. Like it's 12 minutes. So
Yeah.
this is just in us. And it's really difficult, especially when you get people in a room, to put this data in front of them and to let their brains soak in it and feel the reactions to it, right? But this is the reality of it. We're bad
Yeah.
at being pessimistic. We really are.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I think the big one is if you want to look it up, it's the planning fallacy. And so the planning fallacy is that bias, Michael, that you're talking about of we
Yeah.
like to think things are going to happen and faster, even if presented evidence to the contrary. So that was another thing is when you present this, you're probably going to have to present this a couple of times before. There was a job at Intel. I presented data, the same pretty much data, backed up every month for about 3 months before people actually believed it and started taking action on it. Same
Right.
presentation, just with a month update. I'm like, oh, geez, we're at 1.5 PAD again. Weird. Like, obviously didn't throw that level of sarcasm in there because I didn't want to lose the crowd, but in the back of my mind, I was laying the sarcasm on thick. But yeah, you can definitely look at the planning fallacy. There's a couple different steps to actually counter, the planning fallacy. There is reference class forecasting, which is a fancy word of benchmarking. There's implementation intentions. So implementation intentions is doing what I like to call like a pre-mortem or thinking through the steps that you're going to have to do in a very
Mhm.
detailed, constructive way.
Yeah.
And then the last one is segmentation effect, which we all know very well, and it's just building a schedule. You're taking large tasks and breaking them down into different sequential order. But yeah, those are the three techniques that, backed by science, are supposed to help bust our bias of, um, the planning fallacy. And so for this right here, you're building out, whether you know it or not, when you do this data analysis, you're starting to build reference class forecasting. So you're referencing how we performed in the past and then looking at how we're doing in the future and hopefully pushing that data across. Um, there's a couple other steps in here that I put in, and I would also, this is where I would start, to try and just improve the planning and scheduling process.
Hmm.
And then I would look to, after this, go in and attack specific scopes. But you're going to be hard pressed. They're going to ask you immediately, like, well, what is the problem on the like, what do we can fix? Blah, blah. They're going to go right, like you said, Michael, right into
Yeah.
solution
Yeah.
mode. But try and control that as much as you can. Um, and so then I usually finish with some like quote, and a lot of times I like to throw in like the CEO and one of their quote. Every CEO has some quote about planning, and so I usually find wherever the CEO and I put their picture on it. But to close, I'm like, with because I'm trying to get to a place of like, are we really measuring this stuff, and is everyone paying attention to these metrics? And so that's I usually just finish with something like that. So this is a
Cool.
sample presentation, and kind of what I would do in it. And I know we kind of went all over the place there, but that's just somehow my mind works.
No, that's really fantastic. Um, oh man, there was something I wanted to add to that and it went out of my head. Go back one slide. Thank you. Step three, that's what it reminds me of.
Hmm.
I have another client, large scale client building big things, and they go hard on number three. And what they call it is duration justification.
Yeah.
So if you say this is 3 days, I want more data. I want a couple data points to back up why you think this is 3 days. What are the quantities? What are the labor? What's the location? What are the steps involved? So there's a lot of that going on as well to just refine those estimates and refine how long we think things are actually going to take in reality.
Yeah, I love that. I love that approach because to me, a schedule is just a mathematical model. The act of scheduling is a little bit more a social experiment with people. But to me, it's very, so like that PAD example we gave. Now, obviously, if you were doing some quantities or tracking, you could be looking at that more specifically. But what that allows you to do is just say for like foundations, like, hey, we wanted to do 5 foundations a day. Well, if you're not doing them, then you can very quickly see like where you're at, or maybe one of your rigs didn't show up. Well, now you're at half pace production. And it's really just starts being like very simple transactional math, which then everyone can understand, which then it becomes very easy to like figure out the outcomes of it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So if you're explaining that delay to an owner, like, hey, you got us our design late, and we actually are good at hitting a good production rate, but you just didn't get us to design in time. That's an extension of time, 10 days. We're still going to hit the 20 days. Things start becoming more transactional than kind of crazy emotional meetings where people are yelling and screaming at each other.
Those don't happen. Come on.
Which I actually, I don't like those scenarios, but I'm wired in a weird way, and when someone irrationally goes off their rocker and starts yelling and screaming, I have a really hard time not laughing these days. And it doesn't help the person who's angry to look over at me starting to laugh.
Yeah, you are wired a weird way.
Yeah, I just at this point, I don't know. It's like you do this enough. I don't know. Like, why are we getting so? We need to focus on the solution at hand. Yeah, and then last one, I didn't call this out, but it's a little psychological trick. I always found that scorecards of performance are just like people are innately wired to be competitive and want to win. And so, for example, one of the first things I did at Google that really brought this to light and helped out, I had multiple GCs. The GCs were sending their schedules in at all sorts of different times. They weren't following the standards. It was just kind of a mess. We'd get schedules with some of the critical milestones in, some without, some a couple
Yep.
days later, some without. I literally just created a spreadsheet. I put all the GCs in it. I put this is the date you're supposed to submit and a quick scoring on like, is it complete, And then I would share it out every month. And then, I would just like create a fake or not a little celebration GIF every time. I'm like, hey, you're the winner this month, crown yourself the champion. And people got weirdly into it. Next thing you know, every schedule was on time. The date was complete. Same with PAD. When I got to Intel, they had no metrics that were standard. Everybody was kind of using a different formula, different thing. And I just said, this is the standard. And then I started sharing, like this is the performance list. And all of a sudden, contractor one, oh, we were at 65%, we're what, whatever. We want to be at 80 because that was the goal. Like all of a sudden, they're going to start busting their chops to get up there. They want to help improve, and you can help guide them. So that last one I found is weirdly helpful to get people going and keeping it fun. I think that's also the a big lesson is have bring donuts in or like create a fake silly GIF, but do something that people are like, oh yeah, I want to get that, and you'll be amazed at what kind of change you can inspire.
Interesting. That's a little bit of the gamification of things. Yeah. So we got a few minutes, and maybe there's some questions from the group, and you guys are in the group here. You're welcome to post any questions you might have, and we'll take a minute to answer them. And but while we're waiting for questions to come in, I just want to ask you about what you talked about at the beginning, getting the people into the room, and the piece at the beginning that is about the education of this is really what scheduling does. We build a schedule, and now we have a metric like PAD that can be used to help us understand what's where we are, what's going to happen in the future, the predictability as you're calling it. I'm more interested these days in the people side of this, in like to me, scheduling doesn't seem like a very complicated, like there's a lot of data. It can be really complicated, but the way you've broken it down into a simple thing, like to me, building a schedule and tracking against it doesn't seem so complicated. But there's something that happens when you put a Gantt chart in front of people and I'm working with a client as well where they've been managing projects for forever, but their CPM skills are in the gutter, and so I'm trying to figure out how stuff got done without CPM or like so I'm curious about this. I wonder if you have any thoughts on what happens and how do projects get managed without CPM, and how does stuff even happen in organizations?
Well, I have a feeling, and I may be wrong, but the pyramids did not use Primavera P6. They just built those things. And if you can go up
Yeah,
even to modern times, like the big one they always say is the Empire State Building, how fast it was built and blah, blah, blah. And, you got to sometimes account for the people who died, notably and unnotably, because there were different safety standards and all those good
that's fair.
things.
That's very
But
fair.
to kind of bring it home more to your point, I mean, to me, if you ever go out on a job and you talk to a superintendent who's worth their salt, like they don't need P6. They know for their job, right? They know I'm going to go out with my crew today. I need to get this rough end done. And that's what we're going to do today. And then after I get that rough end done, the next one, and then I'm going to come back and they know how to go build that project. And the tricky part is so to me, it's more okay, well that's that section of work and that over time, but they don't necessarily know how really long that's going to take.
Hmm.
But then you also add 10 more superintendents into the mix that are all working in different sections, controlling their own areas. Now, are they doing it in the most optimized scenario? Are the pieces that they're orchestrating actually creating a puzzle that is the most optimized and beneficial? And then to follow on it, if you are going to build this puzzle over and over and over again, which a lot of programs have very similar components, even when they build different things, right?
Yeah.
Do you have now the data to help you on that next project? And so I think there's many facets there. And I mean, it's hard to, truly answer that question because it's kind of like a big who knows, because there's also things like
Yeah,
contracting strategy, um, that come into play. Like how are we contracting and sharing risk? And, that's a
yeah,
whole conversation, outside of my, a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. But, I do think how I look at it is there are incredible tools and technology now that will help elevate planning and scheduling, and that's what they should be used for, And I think in the past, it's just, it is they got it done and they did it well. Um, and but the thing is, like for the Grand Coulee Dam, they did it all on paper. Like, how do I know if I go build another dam what they did and if did they actually finish on time? I don't know. Like,
yeah,
so I think there's some aspects of that.
yeah. It's really interesting. You mentioned too about like wanting to create a change. Um, and I think about that kind of change piece as well for organizations who are maybe trying to embrace scheduling more. Um, it is an organizational change. Like it's an organizational change in one, your processes, how you're going to do it, but also how your people are going to think about this work or talk about it. Like you're saying, let's put it up, let's calculate our PAD, let's talk about it this way. Um, these are these are some of the organizational things I'm thinking about. Like, I don't know if you have any thoughts on on like tools versus people. That's kind of where I'm going, I think.
Yeah. So I think to me, like you, I'm less worried about the tools. I mean, I remember one of my first scheduling jobs. I had a superintendent come in and he's like, "Oh, the only thing a schedule's good for is to put in like my spit can." And I was like, actually, Charles, it's not even good for that because there's a lot of ink on it and it's not going to absorb the chew spit. Not to get gross, but I'm just being practical here with you, buddy. Uh, but what I was able to do is like, hey, how about do you like getting roasted every single progress meeting, when your stuff isn't updated, and you looks like you're falling behind, but you're really getting pushed by the person behind you? He's like, no. He's like, well, how about I do that for you? And we start there. Great, right? And you're able to alleviate that pain point. And so when I look at that from a organizational standpoint, when I'm going in as a scheduler, the first thing I'm thinking is like, where are we at on the scheduling continuum? And typically it's just
Hmm.
low. And people aren't understanding they have really bad past experiences and they're not, they don't quite grasp the value of it. And so I think that's the first place I typically start is like, okay, what in general would help these people out or improve these people or give any sort of value to a good chunk of people, and you got to be strategic in this. So you're either shooting for the project executives or directors or you're shooting for the project managers, right? But you're looking at what group would be your advocate to help you win at scheduling and what could you provide them, right?
Hmm.
And so I
Yeah,
typically start there, and it usually starts with like an education type piece, but not this is how P6 works and the buttons you click.
yeah,
I'm talking about, hey, listen, we're having this issue, right? Like I work a lot on the client side, so it's usually general contractor performance. Like we're
okay,
having these issues with general contractor performance. These are the sorts of thing. This is like two solutions that I would love your help to implement, and this is the value it brings, right? And so without them even, like knowing about scheduling, understanding it, oh, okay, well, that is a problem and this is a solution for it. And then as you start to come with more and more things, you have that good grace. You have that like now I provide value and these things will provide value. And
yeah,
then I will start to look at how we can go, knock things out of the park. If you're in a scheduling organization, which isn't usually a client side, but more a GC side, like there is going to be a skill set gap and probably a deficit of schedulers and planners, right?
yeah,
And so figuring out how you're going to jump over that gap and get people on board is you'll have to work through what your solution is, because the solution isn't to give superintendents everyone a P6 license, right? They don't want to schedule P6 to begin with,
Oh,
right?
that's not the
The other
right thing.
solution, which also isn't going to work, is go hire 20 skilled schedulers. That's not going to work because they don't exist. They're not out there, right? So what's that middle solution you're going to be able to bring and go tackle to bring to the program? Maybe it's simplifying schedules. Maybe it's bringing in another scheduling program like Planera or something, right? Smart
Yeah.
Sheets where the superintendents can go do their party, but you have a nice little roll up that you can manage at a schedule level. And so really when I'm looking at people, the terrible, but I'm looking at it kind of like that Mr. Beast um, thumbnail and thing. I'm thinking 95% of this solution, how can I get this person on my team? What is the thing that I can do to get them to come along with me to be an advocate for me? Because once you have an advocate, you've seen this, Michael, in organizations. Once you have an advocate, it's game over. It's like, dude, you're jumping on the train. That thing is rolling out of town.
Yeah.
But till you get to that point and you're not providing value, you're going nowhere.
It reminds me of there's a great bell curve. It's called the technology adoption bell curve kind of thing. And you've got your innovators and your early adopters. And innovators are the super super keeners, right? There's like 2.5%, and then your early adopters is like another 12.5%. So like 15% are super keen, want to try it, they're open, and then it's trying to get the rest. And the other
Yeah.
guys, the guys in the middle who are the kind of like
The
uh
laggards, I think,
the laggards are way off
are the
but
back. Yeah.
yeah, they won't do it unless they see it's proven by somebody else. I could pull this up. I think it's called the law of diffusion or something like
Yeah.
that, but I'm going to use
Yeah,
it in
it's
a
like the
presentation recently.
iPhone. You got to wait till
Yeah,
and
it's got to
it's
be a
like it,
proven technology. So if
yeah.
you can get these first 15% to prove it, then the other guys will come along. So that's exactly what you do. You look
Yeah,
for your
I think
advocates. Yeah.
that's a great point too, where, while what I'm saying may sound grand and like earth moving or changing, starting small with that small group, proving out the wins, and then moving forward, is the strategy you always want to take no matter what you're doing. Don't You're going to resource load a schedule. Don't resource load the whole thing to start out with. Like just pick one
Go
small
easy.
section, get your chops down, and then move forward. And it's like with anything, start small, keep it simple, and then focus on those couple, people to get to advocate.
Yeah, and that's part of organizational change, man. It's like figure out what you're trying to do, your why, find a pilot group, pilot it. Did it work? What'd you learn? And then grow your pilot group to increase it to other things. That's a kind of
Yeah.
a process you can apply to all sorts of things.
Well, and to pull back forward, I mentioned earlier, the thing that people miss then is then a lot of people are a little bit shy or uncomfortable about sharing what they do. And it's tough. I've been in
Hmm.
lots of corporations, and you don't want to come across as the person who, is Mr. Braggy Braggy, and this is what I did. But you also don't want to not share what you're doing. And so that was one of the solutions I brought up with the email newsletter. You need to get people to like, I always love when I'm in a meeting and someone's like, well, we're doing this. And then you look over, the other person's like, you're doing that? I want to do that, And so if you're not
Yeah,
communicating out those wins or whatever they are, of like, hey, we've eliminated this problem for this group and they're loving it, people will read that and be like, well, I have that problem. I want it eliminated, and that's another way it has to be this like slow pressing motion because or that's what I think a lot of people think it's going to happen overnight. But you know what? You're going to have Bill not read your email that week or, whatever it is. And you're just going to have to keep on slowly pressing till you get that change enabled.
good point. I think that's a great place to leave it, actually. The slow pressing, we're slowly pressing this information into your brains as well.
Yeah.
I think
I
we've
probably drank too much coffee. I probably quickly pressed.
I think we've got the early adopters here on the call or here in the room.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
get it.
Awesome. So, Micah, just lastly, where can people find you if they want to know a little bit more about the kind of work you do? And because I know you put a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, yeah, I would start with just on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. That has my bio, that has our email newsletter. If you go to YouTube, you can search Beyond Deadlines, and will pop up. It's also found on anywhere else you listen to your podcast. But yeah, I just started LinkedIn. If you feel free to reach out, I try and respond to most people. I do get a lot of spam nowadays, so if I
Oh,
don't ever respond to you, just
yeah.
hit me another message. It's not because I don't like you. It's not because I don't want to reach out. It's because like 40 people tried to offer me financial services or something. And so, yeah, I would definitely start with LinkedIn. And if you have any questions from the day or whatever you need, happy to have a chat or a conversation.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you being here and sharing this with us. Thank you so much. Those of you who made it to the Zoom call, thank you as well. Really appreciate you guys being here. I'm working on getting the schedule posted for October. That'll be up soon, so we'll keep doing these things in October. And we're also live on YouTube, and there might be some people hanging out with us there. Thank you guys for joining as well. And we'll leave it there for the day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again, Micah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.